G'day, 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 Mathematical KM. Remember, it's not a title, it's Keith Molumby. Okay, probably it felt like one of the best hippos I've played thus far. So with that lead in, just going to show you a little bit about my opponent and also our Canberra Chess Club. We've got a different trophy that goes over the year where you even get points for participating in a game and then for a draw or for a win. Classical Rapid Lightning. And I show this because my opponent, Anderson Wrench, is second from the top in the category of the unrated. So this is far and away different from my last week game, which lasted all of 10 moves. This one was 39 moves and quite the arm wrestle. So he's basically at the top of the unrated and soon to be rated, no doubt. For me, in the under 1300, but Keith, you're telling us your FIDE rating's 1464. Yeah, these are ACF ratings, Australian ratings. Why the Australian dollars so much more than the FIDE? I don't know. But anyway, you can see there's me coming in at, I think, what's that, fourth? And you might also note the dashes under Summer Lightning and Autumn Lightning. And it's probably going to be a dash for the Winter Rapid as well. I like my 60 minutes for a game. So, fourth, but not playing the short form. I'm a test cricketer, for those of you who follow cricket. You'll get that. Okay, so let's dive across to, and yeah, so there's Anderson, not rated yet, but he soon will be. He's going quite well. Get rid of those, into the game. And again, one of the most enjoyable, but I don't know about stressful, but took intense concentration for a long game, hippos. So let's go. After the game, I asked Anderson if he'd played against Hippo before, and he said, yes, Keith, but only against you. So I have met him before. I haven't checked up on who won the last time, but let's just look at tonight's game. Okay, so he's taking the middle. So far, so pretty standard. Bring the bishop out, and interesting what the computer's recommending, but Chess Giant, whenever that bishop's there, it's the e-pawn. So we play and it's the book move, even though the computer was recommending against the book move. So go figure that one. C3 is an interesting move. It kind of traps that knight, but he must be planning that knight to D2. I move this one forward a little early. I don't want knights or bishops coming into my side of the board. Defense. He castles. Move the knight in, starting to set up my thick-skinned hippo. Continuing to set up the thick-skinned hippo. That pawn, stopping the bishop, an annoying move of the bishop to here, pinning the knight to the king or anything like that. Now I'm glad I've got these two pawns. If that pawn comes forward, that pawn comes forward and moves that bishop along with tempo. Fianchetto my light bishop. That's interesting. He's got his battery aimed at a pawn that's only protected by a pawn. Sure, a pawn's a great defender, and he would be sacking a bishop. If he, bishop takes pawn, pawn takes bishop, queen takes pawn, check. Probably worried a little too much about this because even though that queen's 2 squares from my king and checking him, I guess I could very much ask for, do you want the ladies to come off? And sure, I wouldn't be able to castle, but I would have been up a piece. But he'd have some sort of an attack. There'd be no pawns in front of my king and there'd be a rook lined up on it. All in all, not something that I'd like to see happen. So, computer's not overly fond of it, but I now have 2 pieces protecting the pawn, so he's not going to do that. It's interesting. I was kind of hoping for either computer wants his D pawn, I'd move my E pawn. I wouldn't mind locking this centre up. If he was to go the other pawn, then that pawn forward and the bishop would need to move away. For now, he's giving his bishop a chance to be able to move back and stay on that diagonal if anything like that were to happen. I've moved my king out of the path of that rook because there are a number of situations where things can open up in the middle there. Not the least of which being bishop coming in and just getting the king out of the way. Okay, so and we're looking at the potential of another Lego type fit, either that way or this way. Filling that defence up. And I had noticed at this point, I was thinking I'm unlikely, again, quite a strong player. Not sure I'm likely to achieve this, but if he doesn't notice, and look, the computer's even suggesting g5 there, but g5, g4, where does the knight go? Queen's got these two squares covered. That would be nice. A lesser player might lose a knight here, from White's point of view. So I play that move, and really he wants to move any one of these pieces. And the third best, I think he's gone. Not knight to b3, which would be activating it a bit and trying to come in, but he thinks to reroute his knight that way. It's called questionable, but it was certainly good enough to stop me. The computer still wants me to make that knight move. Well, if I did, we know where it'd be going. It'd be going there. Driving it backwards, but on the other hand, possibly overextending my pawns is what I was thinking, so I didn't go with that yet. I've instead brought out this knight, and now, what was the knight that moved doing? It was protecting this pawn. So now I've got a knight and a bishop. One of the long-term goals of the Hippo is to try and win a central pawn. And he does need to do something about stopping me from taking that pawn. One interesting choice, it's not played. It's interesting that the computer was suggesting to protect it with a bishop, but that would have removed the battery and decreased a lot of the tension that was going on in this part of the world in front of my king. But if he'd moved it forward, I don't think it would be very good to move that pawn straight forward, because then if he took my knight, I'd take his bishop and then he'd take my queen. What? Yeah, exactly. If he moved that pawn forward, I would probably be doing something like moving the knight here. And then if he takes that pawn, I'd probably take back with the queen or something like that. But it would be interesting and it would change the dynamic in the middle. But almost keeping the tension, got a question mark. He now has his knight and rook. So two defenders, two attackers. Can't take that e-pawn. Not yet. It's given a little bit of a blunder. I was thinking about trying to capture one of these knights, and I was thinking rook to the side, move the bishop back. That way the rook's protecting this one, and I could move this pawn forward and then this pawn forward. Not really the best of plans, and we'll see. He puts together quite the little mini attack here, and I kick and scream and come out of it with an attack of my own, the counterpunch. So that gives me a little bit of time. He's obviously trying to stop me from playing the move that the computer still wants me to play, which is g4. There you go, interesting. I have wanted to play not connect 4, but connect 5. I win. I'm actually thinking about playing d5. Don't want to take back with the e-pawn. All sorts of bad things with if the e-pawn gets out of the way, and if he takes with the e-pawn, he's got a rook on my queen, and yeah, no. So with the c-pawn here, and the bishop, and the knight, that gives me 3 pieces protecting the d5 square. And he has 1, 2, and if he wants to use it, his e-pawn, but that's 3. But I've got 1, 2, 3 without using my e-pawn, so that is going to allow the d5 push. Hence the supposedly questionable move. But he's lashed out and he's going to burst his way into my position. Computer doesn't like it, but it does get in. So well, let's take a look. Bishop takes pawn. I've got no choice but to say prove it to me. If you look at from minus 1.4 to me to the next one's plus 2.7 to him. So I've got to take the bishop and say prove it. I take it. His next move is knight takes g5, best by computer, and played. King to c7. I did want to join my 2 rooks, and I can see that. That looks nice. What did I play? Well, I was preparing that push. Played it. And it can't be that bad. We're at minus 1.2. He's taken with the e-pawn. So he is kind of X-ray vision on the queen there. Obviously don't want to take with my e-pawn. Computer likes knight. I think I liked c. Keeps my knight in the action and comes with a little bit of tempo. And if he does take the pawn, I'll take back with my bishop. If he takes the pawn, I'll come back with my bishop, and he will not come in with his queen because I would then get his queen with my knight. So I didn't mind the pawn. I like that king to c7 move the computer was suggesting, but anyway, so I've gone with the pawn push that I was setting up. He's moved his bishop back. Now, knight to e8 is the suggestion, and we are looking at, we've got to take into account that he has a knight and a rook on that e-pawn. He's already sacked 1 piece, but can you imagine if he were to... I can see things going wrong. How was I thinking this one out? Just a few ticks. If he were to take with the rook, now how does this go? I was a bit worried about my queen ending up on f8 and his knight ending up here. But I have played a bit of a blunder allowing some of these tricks. I was just trying to say goodbye to that knight and ask it to go away. And that's a nice move. A great move, as you can see. That knight is threatening the queen and the bishop. A little bit of a fork. Computer calls this a... how would you put it? When you look at the thing, it says that I'm going to lose my queen. And essentially I can, if you take the line the computer's actually recommending for black, it ends up at minus 0.1. Still black's favour, but I lose the queen, but I get 3 minor pieces for it. I end up with 4 minor pieces versus 1 minor piece. Or so 3 minor pieces, 3, 6, 9, theoretically equal to a queen, but I'd rather keep my queen. But the computer thinks I'd be better off getting all the minor pieces. And here we have back 0.7 to white. Comes in with a check. Best I can do is take it back. White's best move is taking the bishop. And here we have an interesting moment. Very interesting moment. And you can see the light blue computer suggestion. I found it, and I was pretty happy with myself for finding it, because it's kind of ignoring the knight on the queen, because you're going to come in with check and open the king up. Is opening the king up worth it? I would say so. By the way, move 22, just on with the clock and with the hippo. Move 22, my opponent was down from the 60 down to 10 minutes, and I still had 31 minutes. So you do get a bit of an advantage over those first 10 moves, setting it up. Okay, so again, yep, I did spot that. Check. Pretty much the only thing you can do that's worth salt is taking the rook. So he takes it. And check. He found the best move, which is, of course, blocking the check and not just losing the knight. And what's the material right at the minute? I've got a rook, 2 knights and a bishop. Queen, rook, 2 knights and a bishop. And he's got a queen, 2 rooks, a knight and a bishop. So equal number of pieces, but I'm down the exchange, giving white +4 on material. So I've got this activity with an attack on the king at the expense of quite a lot of material. But in many ways, we've got 9 and 5's 14, 17 points of white, about as far away from the king as it can be. Let's see if we can do something with that. So here we go. Great move, blocking it instead of losing the knight. Well, yeah, okay. Let's take that knight anyway. Check. Moving to the H file would be, I was going to say suicidal, and you can see mate and 3, mate and 9. Moving, so the only move is to go that way. It's interesting that the computer's asking for the queen to come here, because that would let the king through. I didn't really want to let the king through. As far as I can see, if I can keep my queen covering all of this, then if I can manage to get a rook, it may not happen, but that's certainly a decent sort of an attack and mate threat. So let's see how we go trying to make that happen. Step 1. Let's go back one. So I see the computer liked king to c7. I particularly liked e7 because even though his rook's kind of busy back there, it's also threatening a hanging pawn, which is why I liked king e7. Anyway, so we're on 0.9 to white. Goes to 2.5. Interesting. Especially with, and that's opened the way for my rook to come across with that little plan I talked about. The best move for white is rook to e3, and played. Now, the king still can't go here, and these squares are covered by the queen. I'm still thinking that that rook coming across causes a few problems. So, interesting. And this was perhaps the big chance my opponent had to cause me a lot of trouble. But, like, I can kind of see what the computer's saying. Bishop takes pawn. Bishop takes bishop. Queen takes bishop, and the pawn can't take it back. But it's not check. You'll end up with a queen here. What happens is that not checkmate? Might be worth really going through. Let's make me a bit smaller. We'll have a quick look at these. Bishop takes. Looking at the smaller screen here, folks, if you can. Bishop takes. Queen takes. Rook to h6. Oh. Because I can't go rook to h1 because the queen would take it. And then the fight goes on from there. Well, that was pretty deep calculation. And I guess I got away with a little bit of a misstep there. So, let's get this back to what was actually played in the game. Okay, here we are, where the computer is recommending that quite a good strategy in the end for white, taking that pawn. But the king is doing a runner, very human. Now, it's 4 pieces to 4 pieces, even though he's got 2 rooks. That rook's not really getting to do very much. And I know at some point that moving that rook there, pinning, making the king move, I could then take the rook, but then of course the queen could take it. What I am thinking is this knight's not doing much at the moment, and if I can get this knight to here, then the king's still in danger of back rank checkmate. So let's try and develop the knight. It's called a great move, so yeah, okay, it was a good thought. Computer wants the king to come to d2. The king does come to d2. Pinning the rook or the knight in, and I personally went with the knight in with check. Had the king been here, then it's not quite playable yet, but there'd be a fork of king and queen. Computer's recommending king to c1. We in fact get king to c2. And the computer recommendation of f8, focusing on that pawn. Well, the second best is h2, also focusing on that pawn and lining the king up with the queen. And that is what I played. You'll notice that pawn forward cannot be played because that would be placing him in check. And if nothing else happens, the rook takes the pawn, it's check, the rook then gets the queen. So there are problems. We are causing some problems. Okay, he's brought, and you'll notice that he was unable to move the e-rook to e2 because it just would have been taken, giving check and then the chance to get the ladies off. So he did need, because I've got the knight and the rook, he needed a protecting piece. So he's moved that rook across. And I have, and you can see the queen to f4 is the recommended move. Because again, if things don't happen from there, if the king doesn't get off this file, then the queen can take that rook because the pawn can't take it back. And it also puts the queen and the rook and the knight going on there. So I've played it. The suggestion is king to c1. We've actually moved it to b1. And you remember that the idea of forking the king and the queen? Beautiful. Just got to get rid of that rook. And what I thought about was, won't be winning a queen because it'll be both the queens will die, but I will win a rook. This was a nice little plan. I take the rook. No real choice. He'll take my queen. Then I check both the king and the queen. And I've still got a rook covering the whole second file, so the king can't even come at the knight. Let's see how that went for me. And we're at move 32. Just to give you the clock, my opponent was down to 3 minutes. I had 18. So, using that clock, maybe I should have been using it a little more. So I found that move. Was that the best move? Oh, they actually want me to take the pawn and check the queen. No, I like this one. And f takes is indeed the best move. That's the best move. Oh, and he's gone the wrong way. I talked to him after the game and he was worried about going to a1. He was thinking it was going to be, if he'd gone to a1, he was thinking checkmate with the rook taking the queen, forgetting that his bishop could take the rook. So other than winning on the clock, let's go back a little. Rook takes f2, the computer one. It's only about -1, as against -0.12 anyway. So we'll go with what I played. And yeah, the king going that way was a mistake. Comes with check. Best move he's got is taking. And from here, we've both got 4 pawns. 2 of his are hanging. One of the hanging pawns is already under threat. And I've got a rook and a bishop. He's only got a rook. And we're at move 36. So he's still on 2 minutes. He's having to play a lot quicker. And I'm on 19. So I can complicate. I can try and win pawns, try and grind it out. So the clock's on my side. Okay, nice thought. That would win him a bishop if I don't do something about it, which I do. He plays it anyway. Best move. Best move. That's his best move. Best move, just take it back. King to threaten the rook. Let's get the rook safe. And what more than being safe, the rook's threatening one of his pawns. And if he takes, then I can take that pawn. And then we can look at promoting. It's all looking good. Apart from anything else, the bishop here is going to be, probably would happen. The sort of setup where the pawn protects the bishop and the bishop protects the pawn. The king protecting. I'd be in pretty good nick. And that's move 40. And my opponent was down to 1 minute and 2 seconds, and it was just looking a little too hard. And that's when he shook my hand. So quite full-on game. Took a lot of concentration for a fair amount of time. You can see that there's that moment where, not easy to see, pretty deep, but the bishop taking the pawn is the way to go for my opponent. And let's see, what was the big moment here? Oh, of course, the forking the queen and the king there. But even from there, king to a1, he zigged when he should have zagged. It was probably because... And then we've both got a rook and a bishop and the same number of pawns. Pretty even. Pretty even, except for the fact that at that time he had 2 minutes on the clock to my 20 minutes. How much does that make? Who knows? But an excellent game against a soon-to-be rated opponent. Enjoyed it immensely. And that's all for quite different from last week's 10-move game against unrated. There's unrated and then there's unrated. And I'll see you guys next time.